Hello, let's talk about a highly debatable subject in RLCS. I would like to go through every team that's qualified for Worlds and give my personal opinion about which player is the best player on that team. Obviously, all of this is up for debate, but we're just going to go region by region, so let's start with Karmine Corp. Now, during my top 25 player list, I received a lot of feedback by putting Drolly first. Keep in mind, this is pre-Raleigh Major. I put Drolly first, Vatira second, and Atto I believe I had at number 8 or somewhere in that range. And I got a lot of feedback saying that, Atto could be considered the best. A lot of feedback saying Vatira was better than Drolly. I think when looking at the performances from this year, I do actually put Vatira as the best player on Karmine Corp. I think he has a level of consistency that I haven't seen from the other players, Atto and Drowley. I think Vatira is more consistent. I think he is generally better on LAN and has more experience on LAN. And so, yeah, that's my argument for Vatira. I think this is one of those teams where you could technically make good arguments about the other players being the best player on the team. But I think as of right now, before Worlds, but after the first two lands of the year and all the opens, I do think Vatira was the best player on Karmine Corp. So I've come around and replaced Drowley with Vatira in my mind. Dignitas. We got Stizzy, apparently Jack, and Jorius. I think that this is another team, these top teams, it's always tough to say. I think I would probably pick apparently Jack as the best player on this team, even though I think Stizzy and Jorius have a higher peak than Jack does. I think apparently Jack's been consistent and kind of the in-game leader that these teammates needed. And while I think that I go back and forth because I could also see Stizzy being like the most impactful because apparently Jack and Jorius, if you had another person on the team who, was like Stizzy, would they do as well? I'm going to stick with apparently Jack. I do think he is the most impactful, and it goes a little bit further than just mechanics or anything like that. So I'm going to pick apparently Jack. You let me know if you think Stizzy or Jorius is actually the best player, and please give your reasoning why when you say that. Vitality, this one, probably one of the easiest ones, clearly Zen. Even though they are performing better, Monkey Moon is starting to show up in the Raleigh Major, and Exotic was looking good as well. I think Zen has clearly been the best player on this team throughout the season, I should say. So that one I feel like is barely debatable. Probably not debatable. If you think differently, you have to let everyone here know why you think differently. GK, we've got Archie, Joyo, and Oli. This one is tough. It would have been great if we could have seen them perform at the Raleigh Major. That would have helped me form my opinion, of course. I think that between all of these players, who's the most impactful? I could see arguments for all of them. I do think Joyo's probably the best player on this team. Joyo is, but I could hear an argument for Archie or Oli. I think I would put it Joyo, Oli, Archie. Even though Archie is a great player, I do think he's probably the least impactful on this team. You could probably swap him out and get similar results, although he's had some very clutch moments, so don't want to underplay his success or his skills. But I do think Oli also was really good this season. Had some really clutch moments. I'm going to stick with Joyo. I'm going to stick it with Joyo. NRG, another relatively debatable one, I think. You've got Atomic, Beast Mode, and Daniel. Now, early on in the split, first couple opens, I thought Atomic was the best player. Then in the second round of splits, to me, it was pretty clear that Daniel was the best player. And then at Raleigh, I thought all three of them did well, but I felt like Beast Mode finally was really starting to show some of his creative offense that everyone loves him, except for the people that play against him. Everyone loves Beast Mode for his creative offense and ability to create plays where many of these pro players could not find those opportunities in those moments. Now, as far as the year is concerned, the season, I think Daniel would be my pick for the best player, even though he hasn't peaked or shined as brightly, I think, as he did last year on G2 when they were with the G2 org. I do think Daniel's floor and consistency has allowed NRG to stay basically a top 4, top 5 team the entire season. Very consistent team, arguably one of the most consistent teams, if not the most consistent team as far as results are concerned in the RLCS this season. So you guys let me know if you think differently. I'm going to pick Daniel here. I could see arguments for Beast Mode for sure. Atomic, I don't think really showed us enough in the last couple months, but he did come out very strong. Now, Ultimates. First Killer, Chronic, LJ. As much critique as we can give First Killer, I think he still is showing as the best player. Chronic has been a little bit inconsistent, often does well, but I don't know if some confidence issues or something, but it's just not quite there a lot of the time. LJ, awesome player, great skill, but I do think First Killer has been more impactful when it comes to this team, going to the grand finals in Birmingham. And then obviously they didn't make it out of Swiss in Raleigh, and they didn't win any of the opens. So I think this team's probably going to get shuffled up and changed around next year. But for now, I think it's still pretty clear to me that First Killer is the best player on this team. Space Station Gaming, SSG, Scribbles, Reveal, and Kofer. I think that there's a angle for each player on this team to be considered the best player on the team. I think Scribbles, pretty high, all these guys are very high peaks, low floors. I think just based on the fact that when they replaced Frosty with Kofer, the team became much more consistent, got better results. Now, obviously, we were all probably a little bit disappointed in their LAN, but also keep in mind, these guys are like 15 or 16 years old. So this is the very, very start of their career. Just because they played in some RLCS events before that, to expect them to go and do amazing things, I think is a little premature, but I have to say Kofer, to me, is highest impact and probably the best player on this team for 3v3. I think Reveal does a lot of things that you can't quite see that cause them to be successful. Scribbles does a lot of defense, really solid defense that keeps them in it. But as far as best player via impact and, who they were before and after these players were, I think Kofer is my pick for the best player on SSG right now. Please let me know your thoughts on this one, because I think this is another one that we can sit here and debate. Gen.G, we've got Magic Bear, Cheese, and Justin. Of course, they swapped Reddles for Justin a couple months ago. I guess 2 months ago, probably at this point. Yes. Yeah, in April. Okay. Yeah, 3 months ago. Wow, time's flying. For some reason, that feels like it happened more frequently or more recently. I think Magic Bear is probably the best player on this team between them. I really like his impact, his offense. I think helps them peak at higher levels and go on to do really well at these events. Cheese is very consistent. Justin is extremely consistent and also occasionally shows some insane peaks. Also, like one of everyone's favorite players, right? Everyone loves Justin. But I think Magic Bear right now would be my pick for the most impactful and the best player on the team for Gen.G. Wildcard. Fever, Torsos, Banana Head. I think that, to me, Banana Head is still probably the clear best player, not just on mechanics, but also just consistency. And Fever and Torsos, I think they need to redo this roster for next season, but I have some faith that they'll do better in the next at Worlds. OCE's had a rough season so far. I think Banana Head is still the best player out of OCE. He's been my pick, and I usually put him in my top 25 list because I do think he is a very high-skilled player. And maybe this is an insane take, but to me, he reminds me of LJ. Like, I feel like him and LJ have similar styles where when they're really playing well and really on their game, they look almost unstoppable. Like let's not forget that, this team and this roster has peaked pretty hard against certain other teams. They almost beat Karmine Corp this year as well. TSM, that's going to be Amphis, Super Lucky, and Kaka. This one is tough because, to be honest, I don't have as much background knowledge about them. I think based on what I've seen, I like Super Lucky on this team. But to be honest, it's tough for me to say because I've seen clips of each of them doing well, but I haven't really sat and looked at their whole season, all their events. So please let me know who you think would be the best on this roster. Furia. Here's one that was interesting because I'm what you'd call a Yan believer. I usually have him as a top 10 player, top player in the world. I think we haven't quite seen that as much this year. And we've seen Lost actually take up a lot of the offense and do better. To me, it's between Yan and Lost. I like Drafinho, but I don't think I put him as the best player on this team. Even though he's very consistent, I think it's between Yan and Lost. I think Yan is slightly in the decline as far as influence, and Lost is definitely on the rise when it comes to influence on the team. And when I say influence, I mean like their presence is the difference maker of why they're winning matches. I think I still have to give it to Yan as the best player on this team, but I don't disagree with someone who says Lost is the best player on the team based on how things have been looking so far. But I'm going to go with Yan. You guys let me know what you think. Team Secret. Now, these guys had an awesome Raleigh major after kind of definitely struggling in Birmingham. And, they did pretty well, but obviously they kept losing to Furia in their local SAM regionals. So we've got KV1, Mata, and Swift. I think that the most hype is around Swift because he's a younger player, but for as far as this season is concerned, I think I actually maybe I put KV1 as the best player on this team. You guys let me know what you think. This is another team where I feel like these players are somewhat interchangeable because none of them show as like super peaking over the others. But I'm leaning to, maybe I'm overly biased based on the Raleigh major. I'm kind of leaning towards KV1 being the best player on this team. You guys let me know what you think for that. Okay, Mina, Team Falcons. This one, another one likely to cause some issues amongst the comment section and people having different opinions. You've got 3 amazing players, and they just won the Raleigh Major with Kaliers getting the MVP. So we got TRK, Rawas, and Kaliers. This is tough because historically I've shuffled around between picking TRK as the best player and Rawas as the best player. But now Kaliers has won an MVP of the major that they did win. So you can make the argument that, without his MVP level performance, they probably don't go all the way and finish with a win at Raleigh. So, yes, another cop-out. I do believe you could make the argument that any of these players could be considered the most impactful. Based on what I've seen for this year, I pick Rawas as the best player on Falcons by a little bit. I don't think he is, significantly better than TRK or Killiers. So if you pick them as who you think is the best player on the team, I would like to understand why. And, maybe you'll convince me. But I'm going to pick Rawas. I think he's just too good at defense. He's so good at defense that other teams just can't score on the Falcons. And then their offense, of course, super, super dangerous. Let's talk about another interesting one. We got Verdice Pro, which is going to be Sphinx, Sosa, and Catalysm. It's kind of an interesting team, right? I do think Sosa and Catalysm show up very well on LAN. They play very well on LAN. As far as results are concerned, I do think Sphinx is the most impactful player on this team, and he's also the region's player. Obviously, Sosa and Catalysm are imports here. So I actually pick Sphinx as the best player on this team, which is awesome for APAC, and wish them continued success. My dream is that OCE becomes highly involved with this esport. Sorry, APAC and OCE, but really APAC becomes highly involved with this esport, and we have four well-supported teams coming from APAC someday. That's my dream for RLCS, because I think the esports scene over there in Japan and Korea would love to see that in RLCS. I think there's some hints of that happening, but it would be amazing if APAC became one of the power regions, and I think it has the capability to do it. So anyways, Sphinx going to be my pick for the player. And then last but certainly not least, right, FUT Esports. We've got VK Salen, Leoro, and Taurus 8232. I think based on the performances, Leoro has been their best player on the team. I do think VK Salen and Taurus have both had big moments, but as far as consistency and helping them complete these, getting to lock out the region, even as imports, and having some success, beating some teams, a couple teams on LAN, I do think Leoro was probably the most impactful, although both other players, had their moments. So I'm going to go ahead and vote Leoro as the best player on this team. You guys let me know if you feel differently. Okay, well, that is it for all of the teams. You let me know what you think. Would love to read your comments about which ones you disagree with or which ones you do agree with, as well as any justification or reasoning. Please don't just say this list sucks. Tell me why. Tell me why it sucks. I am educatable. I want to learn. I want to hear from you guys. So if you have an opinion about this list and think, you're sleeping on this player or you overvaluing this player, please let me know. Let's have a discussion and develop the best list possible as a team here. Thank you so much for watching. More content coming out soon, both in RLCS as well as just regular Rocket League content. Thank you so much for all the support. Love you guys so much. Have a great day. Bye.